July 18th, 11:03 p.m. Okay, so I am trying to locate the articles. There were two key events which happened between 91 and 93, which got me put in the gang stalking. I've posted a video in regards to the entrapment event with the FBI and the black teen being shot outside my window. That was the second cover-up I was made a witness to. So I'll start with that one, and then I will get to the cover-up which occurred before that and which had the FBI watching me. As a point, I watch the FBI wipe their rear ends with the police department out in Phoenix. The reality is the FBI got tricked by an American agency from Germany. I was telling them I got in the middle of one more cover-up. Apparently it's my special ability here. Really, I do nothing. These things happen in front of my face. But that's it. Third one is the last one. The FBI didn't believe me. They went through German authorities. This is when I was out in Phoenix in the last 3 years. They went through German authorities and had my father-in-law whacked. They then later found out, it occurred to them, well, maybe we better start double-checking things. They found out the CIA had gotten away with a cover-up. And much to their slight embarrassment on that one, they murdered first and double-checked second. This is what they were hiding from the police department in Phoenix. And the whole story here is, in regards to my being out in Phoenix, I told the agents I was dealing with, I said, look, I'll go to the police department and tell them what a bunch of fuck-ups you are. Everybody thinks you're professionals, and the reality is you whacked my father-in-law, then you found out. I was like, nobody from the police department is going to like you at all based on how you've conducted your business here. So they got all nervous about that, and they began doing setups with the police department out in Phoenix. And they were getting the police department involved in gang stalking events and lying. And for those who don't know the way it works with the FBI, they sell lies about a target. Then they slowly get people's hands dirty in regards to helping the FBI, and really it's a counterintelligence program operation. They drag your name through the dirt, and by lying they get people to get their hands dirty. And the dirtier people get their hands and the more involved they get with the FBI, and the longer it goes on, really the more brainwashed they get. Eventually it reaches this point where they're non-questioning. So that was the FBI's response when I threatened to go to the police department and give them copies of my book and explain to the police department in Phoenix how the FBI had performed. And that's actually my real circumstances. It's why they won't free me from the gang stalking. They're literally lying and holding me in. They want to collect more information in regards to a cover-up gotten away with by the CIA. Big agency mess, and it involves relations with Germany as well. So, and this is how I learned there's no Homeland Security. There is no, well, it's all American agencies and they're all one. That's a load of shit. The CIA burned the FBI, painted a target on my back, and lied through their teeth to the FBI. The FBI was just going from homie to homie. They weren't professional at all. So when I threatened to expose their performance with the police department, give out copies of my book, the FBI, what they did is they began lying and using the local police department there. And really what they did is they wiped their asses with the police department in Phoenix. They had no idea about any of this. I just watched it happen the entire way. The reality is they just lied through their teeth to the the police department and their people and got them involved in stuff that a lot of the police, at that point, they wouldn't have gotten their hands dirty for the FBI, is my best guess. And that was the guess of the FBI as well, no doubt. So they got them involved and quite literally just used the police department, wiped their ass with them. And so that's what they've been threatening to do out here, and that's not happening. If I have to, I will, give out free copies of my book and explain to people how things have really played out. So getting back on track, I'm trying to find these articles and to pinpoint the years. I believe the shooting of the teen happened in 1993. I would bet money on it. And I called up in the first 10 seconds. It happened right outside my window. I called in the first 10 seconds, and the guy at 911 asked, is he white or black? I paused for a second trying to figure out motives here, and I realized, well, every second that kid's dying, he was laid out flat on his back, so I said he's black. Took more than 10 minutes for an ambulance to show up. Now, the people up above the restaurant, there were 9 rooms there, 2 bathrooms. It was like a co-ed situation. 9 rooms, and we shared 2 bathrooms. I believe it was 9 rooms, separate rooms. Everybody paid rent, and we had to share 2 bathrooms and a kitchen. But the point is, they all called 911 within minutes, and the people downstairs working in the restaurant, when it was called Marathon Restaurant, they called within the first few minutes. In fact, by the time I got my shirt on and, my shoes on and got out there, one of the women who worked in the restaurant was already holding up the boy, and she was sobbing, and he was just bleeding all over the place. So there's nothing but shitloads of witnesses to it. But I want to be clear, my speaking about this in video is not about the police department. It is not about these 2 events. I have to prove that the FBI did a heavy smear campaign in regards to my name. They paid off one of my ex-girlfriends who was a corrupt cop and had her say that I raped her. The CIA, this one particular group said, well, the FBI paid her off. And, based on her character, that was never an issue for me. But I finally realized this year when I was out in Phoenix, I realized, well, I'm sure she did get paid off. It was communicated to me $10,000, and I was like, that's awfully cheap. And then this year I realized, well, if you add a 0 to it, that makes a lot more sense. So my best guess is they paid her cash, unaccountable money, and they paid her $100,000. Just because agents communicate something to you, it doesn't mean it's true, but, which was the entire point. Based on her character, she would lie anyhow. But to seal the deal for the FBI, I'm sure they gave her a large cash payment. And $10,000, I was always like, well, $10,000 for such a heavy lie? So this year I finally looked at it, because I've been forced into this. And I'm like, no, I bet it's $100,000. Plus, there are all sorts of stories about this now. People getting these huge cash payments for lying, and it's always a lot of money. Informants for the FBI being paid cash. $100,000 a pop. They've got nothing but money to waste, apparently, and all for illegal activity. It's always entrapment. It's always fake witnesses. It's always people being paid off to lie. So that is what happened. But she got paid off and accused me of raping her. And the reality is she had a post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom. And the FBI was like, well, we're going to take this and make it work for us. And they kept this all hidden from me. She had the post-traumatic flashback, and this is why I've got to pinpoint the dates. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is a couple of years before the shooting outside my window. So now I've got to get to the first cover-up. And that happened, I think, in 91 or 92. So I was working with this guy at this restaurant, Olivero's, a pizza delivery place. And you could pick up pizza there or have it delivered. There was no sitting and dining or anything like that out at Glen Lennox Shopping Center. And this guy named John owned the place, and his niece worked there, Dawn, who is the corrupt cop I speak of. I realized she was studying to be a police officer, and I picked up on, well, this guy I think is an informant, her uncle. I got the job there because this pedophile police officer, as I would find out later, he was the one that recommended I get a job there. I was unemployed at the time. I knew he was an undercover police officer. And at the time, I did drugs, and I had an illegal lifestyle. But I was always, I was always low key in one sense. In one sense, I was a nuisance for law enforcement, but that's not where I'm at now. Point is, I was a kid back then, and I looked out for my friends. But the point is, he recommended this place. I started working there, and one day he told me he's going, and I knew he had a girlfriend. And she was very young. The legal age in North Carolina is 16, so of course I thought she must be 16. What am I supposed to think? I knew he's a undercover police officer, and that's the other thing. I didn't go exposing this guy to everybody, is the next point. So really, the FBI lied through their teeth in regards to me. But the point is, he told me he's going to take he knew that I knew he's an undercover police officer. What was I supposed to think? She's 14, right in front of my face, he's doing this? So he told me one day at work, I'm going to take her best friend up to the mountains, because he had a cabin up there, to get her drunk and try and fuck her. That's an exact quote. Exact quote, by the way. I'll never forget it. And I kind of laughed, but I was thinking in my head, this guy is an absolute piece of shit. And her best friend at that, her name was Bree. So I'd forgotten he had communicated this, and then one night I swung by. This is within the week. I swung by at his place. He lived out behind where the driver's license place is now. And back then it was a crack alley, so I figured, okay, he's keeping an eye on these crack houses. And he had left a 14-year-old who I thought was 16, really way beside the point. Even if she were sick, even if she were never mind 18 or 20. Shit, a grown woman. You don't leave somebody like that in a dangerous neighborhood alone, So I swing by, it's at night, and there are these two black guys there. They were menacing. They looked very dangerous. They were eyeing me like somebody that needed his head chopped off. I picked up on dangerous vibes right away. And she was all nervous. And I was like, shit, I've got to find this guy, Mike. And the other end of it is he is racist, so I'm thinking, okay, well, she's probably nervous because he's racist, but also clearly he would not want two strangers over at the house. All the way around, it was an extremely bad situation. So immediately I went looking for him. I looked for 2 hours straight. I looked at every single place downtown, all his haunts. Asked everybody that knows him, because he hung out with all the townies. Nobody knew where the guy was. I had forgotten that he said he's going up to the mountains to try and get her best friend drunk and fuck her. Next day, and normally I would have called, but I knew that the police viewed me as a extreme nuisance. I've got this drug lifestyle, and I was thinking, well, if I call the police in regards to this and in regards to one of their own people, it's going to make a lot of shit with the police department. Looking back on it, I wish I had, and maybe they would have thanked me. On the other hand, they probably wouldn't have. Probably would have gone right up my ass regardless. So next day, she is in the front page news. And she had been beaten and raped, violently beaten and raped. Black eyes, missing teeth. So her face was smashed in. She had been beaten and raped. And it said in the article she couldn't be named because she is 14 years old. Man, was I pissed off. And then eventually I realized I remembered him saying this to me the week prior. He's going to go up to the mountains. He had a log cabin there. And so I decided, I thought this all through for a few days. I was pissed as shit. I wanted to make sure he got his ass stomped by the police department. So I approached the girl I was dating and her uncle, who both worked for law enforcement. I knew the girl I was dating was studying to be a police officer. There's a story to how I picked up on this. She wasn't very subtle. And I knew they did not know that he was a police officer. In fact, Dawn, this woman I was dating, she couldn't stand the guy. She thought he was a lowlife. Imagine that. So I told her and I told her uncle. They were surprised to hear he's an undercover cop, and I knew this was going to make waves with the police department, and I knew that the FBI would most likely start investigating it. Yes, I knew about all sorts of stuff in regards to the FBI, and at the end of the day, who polices the police. So I strongly suspected I'd end up with the FBI up my ass. So I had one eye open after I spoke to them, and sure enough, a couple of months later, I began noting profiling events. Certain things at the gas station, at the car shop where I took my car in, at the grocery stores, this and that. All counterintelligence program stuff. But the FBI had no idea that I was aware that they had come into my life. I strongly suspected they would. And they had no idea I was watching them the whole time. So as a result, they made shitloads of mistakes 30 years ago. And I mean tons. Now, apparently what they did is there was that situation. Then with the pedophile cop here, then at some point my ex-girlfriend Dawn, she had a post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom. Her stepbrother used to tie her up and rape her. And we were having sex the first time. We're doing, bondage. All I did was tie her wrists up with shoelaces. She had a post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom and totally fucked my head up. And I figure one day she'd tell me what had happened when she was comfortable enough to speak to me about it. She never did. And so what the FBI did is they took that and labeled me a rapist behind the scenes. And there's a whole story here, lots of head games with me and the FBI, blah, blah, blah. But that's the real story. And the thing is, they were selling behind my back I was a rapist to get everybody involved with helping the FBI. And I had no idea. In fact, in 1994, I got, starting April 13th, 1994, I got put into this illegal government program known as gang stalking. It's like counterintelligence program, but it's without it being in the dark. Everybody's just doing shit to your face, you name it. And I'm sure it was 1993, the shooting happened outside of my window. I called in the first 10 seconds. The 911 responder said, "Is he white or black?" I, paused a moment. I said, "Black." And then it took more than 10 minutes for an ambulance to show up, and the ambulance station was just 400 meters down the road. So I've got witnesses to everything I speak of here and more. But the point is, they accused me of interfering with a federal, and I guess it was a federal investigation. They accused me of interfering with an investigation. I think they had one of their people doing stalk and communicate to me a federal investigation. And the point is, there was no truth to it at all. And when I began bringing this up with people at work, which is where they had this communicated to me, I began telling the truth to the people I was working with. I was like, hang on. I told everybody who worked for law enforcement I was not going to interfere with an investigation in regards to these drug dealers that lived right across the street. And all they did was have people attack me heavily and traumatize me heavily to shut my mouth up. Back then, that shit used to work. And the point is, back when that started, they were also doing a lot of sexual harassment. Now, I thought it was just normal for gang stalking. If I had been guilty of rape, I would have picked up on why they were doing it. I had no idea. So finally, and so they kept that all hidden. They started with bringing up, well, you interfered with a federal investigation, and they saw I was going to speak out. So they waited until I was out of that restaurant, no longer working there, and they waited until I moved to another city. So 3 years later, I moved to Virginia Beach, and that's when they began accusing me of raping this girl, Dawn. And it was traumatic. I was like, the FBI is screwed up here. They think I raped a girl here. And at first, I didn't even know who the fuck they were talking about. I was like, how could they think I raped somebody? And then finally, I remembered this situation with my ex, Dawn, having a post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom. She just flipped out, man. And it fucked my head up. And she had more of these with more boyfriends. I literally got her on cassette in regards to this. But the point is, in 97, I had no idea this had been sold behind my back the entire time. And it was part of a counterintelligence program smear campaign, a character assassination. Nobody likes a rapist, so they paid her off. They took this post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom and said I had raped her. And the reality is, if I had enough money, I could prove that she's had more of these in the bedroom, and her character, she was not a good person, corrupt cop, all this shit, but I don't have the money to prove it. So I've got to first prove that these cover-ups happened for certain people here, and then from there, things begin to unravel for the FBI. I have no interest in the cover-ups or the police department here. My focus is entirely on the FBI. Okay, so I got interrupted here. Getting back to the point, though, the reason why they waited to accuse me of being a rapist is because they knew I would tell everybody the truth. And they also knew I would have woken up to what's really going on here. They didn't want that. So they waited until I moved to an entirely different city, and back then there was no internet, no nothing. And it took me a while to figure out what they were talking about. And then I was like, oh, well, they must be talking about this post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom. And it was traumatic. I had an agency falsely accusing me. It's the FBI. And eventually I began saying to them, and they're just traumatizing me heavily with this shit. So eventually I began getting angry and saying to them the next year, all throughout. And then the next year in 98, I started getting pissed off. I was like, contact Dawn, speak with Dawn. And for some reason, they wouldn't do it, and I could not understand it. And then, of course, a few years later, when I was in Germany, I realized, well, not a few years, quite a few years later, I had a different theory as to how it had all played out here. I didn't realize she had deliberately lied for the FBI until 2012. I thought the FBI had programmed her, convinced her I would rape her if we had bondage or something, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I figured they had pumped her up so full of fear, and they knew that she had been tied up and raped by her stepbrother before. So I thought that's how they did it. She had so much expectation, it caused a post-traumatic flashback. And then later in 2012, I realized, because they play people and their psychology, the FBI does. This is what agencies are known for. It's just that people don't understand the real level they operate on. I do, because I've dealt with it for 29 years. Longer than that, actually. Quite literally longer than 30 years. But she had deliberately lied for the FBI, and the reason why they waited until I moved to another city is they wanted to keep it secret from everybody. They knew I'd speak out the truth about everything, and then people would have been scratching their heads and asses. Because the whole point was I was not going to wear such a lie like that. You know, as I've said many times to the FBI, I'm not wearing your filth. So, that's the first cover-up was the pedophile police officer, and then the second one was the racist at 911, and then I got put into gang stalking April 13th, 1994, and I remember the year because that's the year that O.J. Simpson went crazy and made the news. In Germany, I started writing everything down, my autobiography, and I began connecting all the dots in regards to all sorts of stuff. And where the FBI screwed up is they had no idea that I was aware of them until much, much later. So they made tons of mistakes, and this is what they are worried about. In regards to local law enforcement here, they are totally lying to local law enforcement, no doubt about it. They've already approached local law enforcement, they have lied to them, and they're not telling local law enforcement he's not actually interested in the police department and these two cover-ups. He's interested in getting us exposed, the FBI, and everything we've done to him here, because we're holding him in while lying to you, the police here in this town and city. And the reality is, I got in the middle of one more cover-up in Germany, and it involves relations between Germany and America, which have never been good. You can type in 2014, and you can see that there were all sorts of CIA agents getting caught by German agencies, and American agencies caught one German CIA agent, the BND. And there was this exchange going on throughout the summer of 2014, and that's because relations between Germany and America are so bad in the first place. The head of the CIA for Germany got kicked out of Germany back around 2008, I believe it was. So the relations have never been good, and I'm sitting on top of a mess which will just totally destroy relations between America and Germany. And the FBI is lying about all of this and using local law enforcement here while lying to them. So this is one of the reasons why I bring all of this up in the video. They're holding me in this program, gang stalking, and quite literally trying to collect more information on the CIA and their cover-up. Because the FBI got played. Blind trust. This is how they're playing local law enforcement. Blind trust. This is the mistake I've seen everybody make here. Blind trust. My parents, dumb as shit with the FBI. And my sister and brother, blind trust. Oh, it's an agency. Blind trust. That's not how the real world works, people. So there is a brief history in regards to the video I have done, and I will get into more detail in regards to all of it. The plumbing ninjas, I have to give the story about that, and there is an entire history here. And they lied to everybody at work when the gang stalking started. They said I had deliberately interfered with an investigation, and there's no truth to that one at all. In fact, I wonder if local law enforcement even knew the truth about it. So I'll be doing a video about that. And that's what I'm going to be doing, the history here with me and the FBI, and as long as they're holding me in the stalking, because that's the other one. I have no interest in this cover-up by the CIA. I'm totally done with it. The FBI murdered my father-in-law, killed a bunch of my cats out in Phoenix. They can go fuck themselves. They're getting nothing from me in regards to the cover-up by the CIA. They can absolutely go fuck themselves. But that's the real reason why they're holding me in gang stalking, and it's why I have to take the FBI to court. That's the real reason. It has nothing to do with the police department here. It's not even the same goddamn chief of police. It's not the same police officers. No, nothing. You know, I'm realistic and grounded in reality here. But the way they always get away with shit is by lying about me and where I'm coming from in the first place. So I'll be doing more videos about the FBI and their lying mouths and them just wiping their asses with everybody except their own people. So that's it. In fact, as I understand it, the chief of police lives right up my parents' street. And, you know, I'm not going to the guy's house. You know, I'm a responsible adult here. You know, I thought about going by the police station and informing at least the chief of police and of my circumstances, so at least the police department this time around understands the real circumstances. They're not going to be letting other people in on what's really going on. This involves national security and relations between Germany and the United States of America. They're not going to be signing people on and letting them in on what's going on, but it doesn't mean that I can't go and speak with the chief of police. At least that way the police department is not getting totally used. So I may end up doing it because I didn't do it out in Phoenix, and that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, so I see how things go here. I've got to look up these two articles tomorrow. I'm going to go to the university, look at the microfiche. These were both front page articles. The girl being beaten and raped, that made front page news. Nothing about the pedophile cop was in there, of course. And then the same thing with the kid being shot outside of my window. It said that nobody called for more than 10 minutes after he had been shot, and that's an absolute lie. It didn't mention a racist at 911, no nothing. The whole thing was just, both of them were cover-ups and totally lied about. So I've got to look those up, I've got to pinpoint the years, and I've got to be able to prove to certain people here in my life that there were cover-ups that happened, and that's the starting point. If I get some help here, then I'll be able to expose the FBI and, you know, get my life back. That'll get me out of the gang stalking, and I can have a normal life. Because otherwise, I don't get my life back, and that's not acceptable. So that's it. I've written 3 books shadow banned, no money made from writing 3 books, and it takes a long time to write a book. That's not acceptable. I want my life back, and the FBI is stealing it while lying to everybody, law enforcement included. Punct and period, end of story, and that's the way it goes. When those are my circumstances, then I am exposing the FBI and taking their sorry asses to court. Anybody not willing to question the FBI, that is on them, and if you're going to get your hands dirty, I suggest you find out what you're getting your hands dirty for. Because I'm not, nobody has a right to be attacking me, fucking with my life just because you're too lazy to find out you're being lied to. So that's fucking it. Last points here. I've got nothing but miles and miles of witnesses to the real story here. And the FBI's whole thing has been what they've constantly communicated to me, daily actually, through an assortment of ways. Well, you've got no money, you're never going to be able to prove it. Well, they've got my book shut down. They know as well as I do, if I have money, I can prove all of this. I can prove that the FBI is balls to the walls guilty here and balls to the walls criminal. They've dragged my name through the dirt, and they will continue to do it, and will continue to hold me in stalking while lying about me and my perspective in regards to all sorts of subjects. Really, the way they do it, it's like a nasty divorce. Like the situation with Johnny Depp. They'll take something you say and then build a false profile out of it. They take things out of context, they remove context, they hide context, and then just sell false stories. They'll take a single statement and turn it into something it doesn't begin to be. A few other points here before I sign off. When I first began dating this girl, Dawn, in the first 2 weeks, I picked up on the fact that she was studying to be a cop. She told me about the situation. She got busted smoking weed in her car, and the way she spoke about it, she was very dramatic and putting law enforcement up on a pedestal, and I realized, oh, I bet you were decided to become a cop, just from the way she was speaking about this. So, key point here is I was telling my friends who did drugs, I was like, if you see me with this girl, she looks like this, and I act like I don't know you, just act like you don't know me. And because she's studying to be a cop, and she was, for lack of better words, a bit of a redneck. I say that to give the right connotation for people out there that are familiar with that term. It's not how I viewed her at the time, but I knew she had this streak in her, and maybe a northern redneck. She was racist, but she did. She had this kind of like a vindictive streak, or she's the kind of person that go after people. So, but she also had her good side, which is why I stayed with her a long time, and we broke up, and then I get back together with her. We got back together once, because I wanted to see if she had grown and changed, if she was capable of it, and of course she wasn't. Back then I used to be more optimistic in regards to people, and if you don't find out, then you don't really know. But, so I told people from the beginning I'm dating a cop. They thought I was kind of crazy. I was like, yeah, but she's got some good things about her, you know. And then she had the post-traumatic. Then the situation with the pedophile cop happened, and then she had the post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom. I'm sure every time I think about this, I start having a weird memory shit here. Some people in my life know what this is about. But, I told people I'm under investigation by the FBI, and I'm dating a cop, and then she has this post-traumatic flashback in the bedroom. And this is the one that the FBI is totally worried about. They lied to my parents. They lied to everybody about this shit. They, in fact, had people doing sexual harassment over this shit. And they never knew what the truth was. This is how the FBI gets away with lying. They don't let people in on the key information, which changes how they remove reality to get people. They manipulate people by removing the reality. All the important information, so that they quite literally are able to manipulate people into doing what they want in the first place. This is actually what the FBI is worried about. I've been saying this for years on end. Who the fuck rapes a cop? And to top it all off, when they know they're under investigation by the FBI, and that's the other end of it. It's all beside the point. I'm not a rapist in the first place. But, I've got to make these points here because this is what they've gotten away with. And then there's another point. Hang on. Well, I'm tired here anyhow. But there's another key point. Hang on. I'll see if I can remember it. Oh, right. When I moved out from that apartment up above the restaurant, they had deliberately left the screws on the back of my stereo speaker unscrewed. Almost, they were sticking out. It was a calling card by the FBI to let me know they had cameras in my speaker. And that's one more I've been saying for years and years on end. They're saying this, let's tell them to show you the video. That's the entire point. I never raped her. And the point is, since they're claiming this, and since they had cameras in my speaker, tell them to show you the goddamn video. That's the entire point. I never raped her. So, and that's how I know they're not doing this behind the scenes. They'll have to lie about it. So all the way around, they're guilty as shit. They are disgusting. They are criminal. And they did this for a pedophile cop and a racist at 911 that got a kid killed, a teenager, just a kid, because he was black. So this is what the FBI is worried about, and this is actually why they've got my book shut down. They have my book shut down, so I don't have the money to prove how guilty they are, how criminal they are. I mean, really, this would result in a congressional hearing. So people have got to understand the motives of the FBI here in the first place. If you don't get their motives and where they're coming from, then you can't see what it is they're doing. So that's it. I'm signing off. It's late as shit, and I am tired as shit. Just turned 1 a.m. right in front of my face. I just checked. And I'm tired as shit. So, but that's it for the video. Those are the key points, and this is what the FBI is guilty of. Destroying my life, and for all of the wrong reasons. So that's it.